Well, hello everyone. Hello Chase. Good to see you.
Hey, what's going on, man?
So thank you for everybody for joining us. Looking forward to this. So this session is 10 things I hate about cybersecurity. Chase, you and I are both, I think, at least from a social media perspective, curmudgeons when it comes to the space that we live in. I think both of us tend to
Well,
be
hello,
visibly
everyone.
frustrated with the state of things in many instances that we see, and especially when we keep stepping on the same rake over and over as a cybersecurity industry. And yeah, so really looking forward to having this session with you and sharing some information about some of the cool stuff that you're doing coming up as well towards the
Oh,
end.
well, thanks.
So
Yeah, the moment you said we could do 10 things I hate about cyber, I was like, I'm in. No question asked. I'm in.
just 10? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, cool. So we'll kick it off. We do have the full list here up front, but we will go through them one on one, and Chase and I will just kind of take turns, uh, you know, spreading the negativity around, in true Festivus decision uh, process or uh, uh,
The airing of
tradition. We will,
grievances, right? Yeah.
yeah, the airing of grievances from a cybersecurity perspective. There's so many. These are the top 10 that we kind of just threw down on a piece of paper. If you have others, people who are listening to this, please put them in the chat. We would be more than happy to have a discussion around those in particular as well. Um, but Chase, any feedback before we kick it off with the first one?
I mean, yeah, somebody said only 10. No, that's all we have time for.
Yeah, we'll try to run through these. So the first one is like, you know, I've been in cybersecurity now for 15-ish years, I think. And I think 90% of the stuff that I see talked about, at conferences. I was at the FSI Site conference this week down in New Orleans, and when I wasn't um, eating beignets and stuffing my face full of like fried seafood, I I was listening to a lot of the conversations happening around me and participating in some of them, and it seems like the same stuff over and over. And there's this frustration that like, hey, you know, most of the people in the cyberspace like are of the mindset they don't have to be faster than the bear. They just have to be faster than the person running next to them.
I mean, I think that we've got a real victim mentality problem in cyber where it drives me nuts that folks are just like, oh, the bad guys only have to be right once and no, 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 no. It's like, no, they have to continually be right to actually be successful. If you're relying on stupid things and failed practices, then you can expect that bad stuff to happen to you. It's not this is like the only space in all of what I would consider warfare you can find where the bad guy tells us what they're going to do and we have publications on what works for 10 years at a stretch and people still sit around wondering like how do I fix this problem? Like come on, man.
Yeah.
You're making me insane.
Yeah, Steven just commented the only industry where failure is the accepted expectation. This is,
And I mean, conversely to that, like if you're doing your job right in cyber, you're proving a negative, and then they ask you what you're doing. You're like, well, nothing happened, so I win, I guess. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and I get it, but the whole victim mentality of the bad guys only got to be right once. No. If you break into my house, you were right once, but when I drag your dead body out the front door, I was right the rest of the time.
yes, that's it's nuts. I was talking to a CISO this week, and he was just like, no matter how hard I try, like my whole effort at my company is seen purely as overhead, but it has a material business impact if I'm wrong
Sure.
even once. It's a super frustrating situation.
I mean,
Um,
sounds like his company. You know what? I'd be like, look, I'm going to take a month off and do nothing, and we'll see if you guys think I'm valuable then.
yeah. The second one is all around our one of my favorite buzzwords traditionally is zero trust. Actually, I mentioned I was at the FSI conference this week, and there was very little zero trust there, which was actually interesting to see. There was a lot of non-human identity and AI and agents and things like that at every single booth.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, these companies spend like $50,000, $100,000 every twice a year at these conferences to just slap the latest buzzword on their booth and fly 10 people out there and call it a day.
Yeah, well, I mean, if it's RSA, they're spending 300 grand to be 10 feet away from the toilet in San Francisco, which is kind of a toilet anyway. And I mean, it's only going to get worse if they keep doing that. Buzzwords are buzzwords, the market's there, but ZT is a strategy. So, these folks need to just get over it and deal with that side of it. And, if you don't understand it by now with all the publications and the government money and everything else, then you're just obtuse and you're not even giving it a shot.
Yeah, one of the things I've seen from a zero trust perspective is like if you look at the CISA uh, 5 pillars of zero trust strategy and so on and so forth. Like it's amazing how depending on what, like when I talk to a cybersecurity executive, depending on their background, whether it's networking or data or whatever else, like that is zero trust to them. Like they focus on that one thing that they're familiar with traditionally, and then everything else is just a major distraction.
Yeah, I mean, like strategy wise, because I do a lot of consulting work with folks on the strategy side of it. Like they get so wrapped up around, well, do I do what NIST 800-207 says? It's like, no, it's called a reference architecture. The word reference is in it so that you refer to it and then you build your stuff around it. It's not thou shalt only do this thing because NIST says so.
Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting how people can just find excuses to ignore a strategy when there's so much going on around them.
I mean,
But
excuses are like assholes. Everybody's got one and they all stink.
love it. The third one was passwords won't die. Um, yeah, I was, yeah, every once in a while, so I'm on the board of the FIDO Alliance and had been for a number of years. And the FIDO Alliance was created to like eliminate passwords. Like literally, that's the mission. Um, and we've made a tremendous amount of progress so far. But one of the things I do just kind of every time I go to an event that we have as an alliance is I ask people for like a show of hands. How many of you are still using passwords at your companies? Like you're here at this event for the alliance, driving it forward. And most of the time, like the majority of the hands are still raised. And it's just like, dude, come on. And one of our clients that I spoke with this year, he was like, it took basically the CEO saying like, you have to adopt passwordless, or you're not going to get a paycheck next time, for the whole company to adopt it finally.
Well, and your robot there's right. The most common password this year again was still 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. So I mean, the passwords still suck, and people still use sucky passwords. I don't like passwords. I want to be as passwordless as I possibly can be. I can't imagine folks that are like, please keep flogging me with the password whip. It just doesn't make a lick of sense.
Yeah, the big thing that's like driving change now is like the PCI requirements around passwords and like 15 characters or whatever, and like people are just freaking out and finally looking for alternatives.
Yeah.
It's like it took that long, it took that stick in order to get people to like just go for the carrot, which is kind of nuts.
I mean, to be fair, it took the federal government 35 years to put a warning label on cigarettes causing cancer. So,
By those metrics,
yeah,
we're,
by those
we're
metrics,
way
we're
ahead.
moving fast.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's fascinating just how like security teams are so intimidated to drive like adoption of any sort of identity related effort. I think at this point, we've seen time and time again just how big of a issue like and 8 out of 10 cybersecurity breaches are due to a lost or stolen credential, like over and over and over again, according to every major report that comes out every year. And people are just like, yeah, I'm going to ignore that, and it's largely because like they don't know how to go outside their department and like convince people to adopt a new way of doing things.
I mean, or they've been sold the next shiniest coolest thing that comes out at one of the major events as far as like that's AI powered this, and because it's AI powered, we got to use it, right?
Yeah, I saw a lot of AI powered like SOC investigation products this week, and some of them are really cool. But like you wouldn't need that AI to like investigate 80% of those alerts if you got rid of passwords.
I was
To
gonna
be
say
honest,
you need AI for all those password resets. Super.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so sometimes it just feels like kicking the can on the road over and over and over again. Um, the other thing that like
I love that meme.
just made that on the fly this morning. It's like, but yeah, it's like, dude, I can't. I don't know about you, but can you remember the last time you saw like a positive thing in the press about cybersecurity?
Only maybe the thing for that sort of crappy Netflix movie Zero Day. That was like a positive spin on Cataclysm, but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, it was like, hey, if Google and Apple decide to deploy malware to all our devices, what would we do? And that movie
No,
was
those are
basically that.
updates. Those are product updates, not malware. But they
Yeah,
believe in privacy too, is what they tell you.
that's right. Yeah. Um, but yeah, look, the media just loves negativity. I think we see that, right? And I think that's part of the reason that even though we're doing a LinkedIn Live right now, specifically focused on negativity, which is a little bit
Kind
a
of
little
like
bit
yeah,
fun.
the other.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that there's so much negativity uh, is leading to just people being desensitized to it and um, ultimately getting cybersecurity information and news from like other sources like podcasts and things like that rather than you know reading the headlines.
I mean, don't pump your brakes. We don't want people thinking for themselves. What we want is everyone sucking down the marketing shtick and basically saying that because Gardner said it, it has to be true. So, that, like, I don't want to derail anyone's thought process here. I really hope that they keep just ingesting the BS and thinking that it's the reality.
Yeah, one of the other things that I started doing is when I see a news article, even if it's from like Fortune magazine or something like that that I'm interested in reading, I will click the article link, I will scroll to the bottom, and I'll read who it was written by,
Yeah.
and it'll usually be like so and so sponsored by so and so. I'm like, oh god damn it. Like, here we go. Like another sponsored article by some vendor that is basically just spreading fear so people will take a deeper look at their product. And so
Yeah.
like
I
not
mean,
anybody who actually took the time to do research.
well, they did. They did the research that validated their hypothesis that makes you want to buy their product. So, I mean, they did that, I guess, at least.
But it's I think it's uh, I think people in that position they find themselves impossible to convince otherwise because
Mhm.
they're fully committed to the thing that they're working on, right? And like if somebody was trying to convince me that passwordless is not the right way to go, for example, I would be like, there's just no way you can convince me of that. Like we can straw man and steel man it all we want, but like at the end of the day, I'm gonna have my opinion.
I've got my hill and I'm going to die on it. And that's where I'm
That's
going to
right.
plant my flag.
um, Yeah, this concept of indecision. I was talking to a CISO friend of mine, and he was telling me, I don't think he would say this publicly, so I won't say his name, but he told me, like, he said, it doesn't matter how great a technology is and what kind of boost to my business or my cyber program it would bring. If it's not meeting a compliance need, I'm probably not going to touch it within the next 3 years.
Which
And
luckily no compliant organization has ever been breached. So that's a sound approach to the problem.
yeah, it's they're like, I'm just so busy, like, keeping my head above water on these compliance things that, like, I don't have time. And I'm like, man, this is why the typical CISO tenure is like 18 to 22 months or something, right? It's like, come on, you really feel like you're moving in slow motion. I was talking to another security executive at a large bank, and he was like 11 months into the job. And he's like, I haven't actually implemented anything. He's like, I'm 11 months in, and I have just been purely trying to get a lay of the land.
Are they hiring? Because I'd love to have a job where I don't do anything and get paid. I mean, yeah.
He's like I'm working 14-hour days, but I'm not, like, I haven't actually implemented anything.
Dude, you're gonna stroke out and die for nothing. Like I would just quit. I don't know. I don't know who would subject themselves to that sort of misery. I mean, that's talk about ice skating uphill.
Yeah, this
Jesus.
place has had like 4 CISOs in like 5 years.
Oh my
So
God. Yeah.
I think that's part of it.
Well, whoever that is, they decided to crawl up on that cross, so they shouldn't gripe about the nails in their hands.
Yeah. but the but he did say the money was really good.
Okay,
So
well, at least you're getting paid for it, so fair enough.
yeah, but yeah, indecision is frustrating, man. Sometimes, like, when I'm talking to a security executive or a security team, I'm like, what happens if you do nothing? And they usually like, oh, probably nothing. I'm like, oh, then
Well, then, yeah, okay.
probably shouldn't be talking, type of thing. But yeah, it's one of those things where individuals and teams, like, unless there is an urgent need to do something now that's being driven by higher ups or the regulators, it definitely probably isn't happening.
Well, I mean that's part of the bigger broad problem too, because I do all the work on the on Capitol Hill with a lot of those folks. We keep appointing people into cyber related areas that know as much about cyber as I do about underwater physics, and it's just like you're writing legislation on things that aren't even technically possible, but it's going to work its way down the chain, and everybody else is going to have to subscribe to meeting that requirement that is not doable, and it's just this like constant wash of crap that's unsolvable. And I mean, it goes all the way to the top of the food chain of like, why are we putting lawyers to run cybersecurity programs at the national level?
Yeah, what do you think about this? I've seen a lot of companies, like, kind of splitting the security leadership role, like one being purely compliance driven and like talking to the regulators and being in a room with them 12 hours a day, and then like the actual technical implementation part of it that delivers
I mean,
results.
I think it's a smart approach. If anything actually gets done, I would worry that you're just going to wind up, running parallel threads of getting nothing done. But if you can make it work, great. I know, Lord knows that I would never want to sit in a room with the compliance vultures for 12 hours. So,
Yeah. Um, Human error. This is one of my favorites because I live and breathe the identity space in particular. And we were just talking right before this, or before we went live, about how many of the conversations with like security leaders just this week at this conference were like, we're just going to do more training.
oh God, yeah. I mean, come on, man. Like this one for me, if there's any hill that I want to die on, it's phishing training and cybersecurity training are centrally ineffective as a control. I'm not saying for the record for the 100th time you shouldn't train your people. Please train them, but training is not a requirement for success in this space. You can train somebody all day, every day, and then they're going to click on a phishing link because it looks like a legitimate thing, and they're done. People are going to use shitty passwords because that's just what people do. People are going to reuse passwords. I mean, it just is like humans are humans and humans kind of suck in general. I don't understand how people can think any way other than that. It doesn't make any sense. And it's how much money are you pissing away on a zero return investment? And for me, like on a personal level, I've known somebody that ran a company that did phishing training, and I said flat out to them, I was like, I'll bet you a year's salary that you can bring your phishing training to a company, and I'll come in with some folks I know the next day, and we'll hack somebody, and they wouldn't take the bet. Like to me, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, it's like as long as people can provide a credential over the phone or by typing it in or anything else like that, it's going to keep happening. And like there was a CrowdStrike report that came out, I think last week, that said like voice phishing attempts went up by 400% in the
Or
last,
yeah,
yeah, which
yeah,
is
because I mean, you can
nuts.
go to ChatGPT now, and even if you don't speak English, have it put out a really good phishing link for you.
Yeah, I was talking to a Japanese company CISO, and he was like, I never had to worry about social engineering at my help desk because hackers you speak Russian or Chinese or English, and he's like, they don't really speak uh, Japanese, and he's like, all of a sudden they all do.
They do now, yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody speaks everything. I mean, I mean, everyone talks about the democratization of technology, which is great. Like, there's a benefit to mankind, but we don't own the patent on democratization of technology. The bad guys can do stuff just like we can.
yeah. Jackie just mentioned in the comment like the Okta breach. And I was like, oh, which one? And then because there's been a few, and the thing is, like Okta is just the victim of the circumstance, right? Like
Yeah.
they're the biggest identity provider out there outside of Entra, and so like their customers are being targeted a lot, and especially for them, like they're down market, right? They're not as heavy in the enterprise as Microsoft is, and so those organizations by default have less sophisticated uh, individuals, typically have less training or whatever else, and so they tend to be targeted quite a bit.
Well, and Dan's right too. With indecision is the decision. Like, if you're not making a decision, you're making a decision. So, like, people should realize that too.
Yeah, that one kind of hurts my brain because like sometimes sometimes like people, like um, sometimes people want to make a decision but they can't,
Which
right? And
is
then
screwed up. Yeah, like I can't stand from a leadership perspective when folks have micromanaged their people that much. Like, if you're working for me and I put you in a position of authority and you make a decision, it may not be the right one, but I'll at least have your back when we make the decision, and then we'll fix it if it comes out later. Like, I'm not. You shouldn't be a. It sucks to be in a place where you're afraid to make a decision because you know you're going to get crucified for it.
yeah, like this is critical in a startup, right? Like 99% of startups fail, and so like the trick is like fail fast, right? And make the wrong decision, that's okay, but don't make the same one twice and fail fast when you do make the wrong one.
Yeah, I mean, just that's. I mean, I've written books about leadership, right? I think it just stands out like that's a human, like you said, human error, human persona problem. Like, if you're in charge, the buck stops with you, but you should never not let your people make empowered decisions. You're there to put the flames out when they set the boat on fire.
Yeah, this is always like internally, like how soon do you release a product, right? It's like there's people on in the team that are like, no, it has to be perfect and polished and all this stuff, and then there's other people who are like, no, just ship it, we'll fix it if something
And
breaks.
we'll fix it when it hits the street. I mean,
Yeah, I think context has to be applied to decisions like that, right? If it's a
oh, for
critical
sure.
path tier zero system, you want to be more careful. If it's not, ship it and fix it.
Yeah.
Um, CISO budgets. This is a really interesting topic, especially recently. Like I don't know if you paid attention to the stock market or the Bitcoin price, but it's shit is down, man. Um, and and it's because like it's due to various reasons, but like man, um, you know, there's been so many instances just in the last few months where like I talked to a security executive. They're like, "Well, our stock price is down. I don't know how we'll be able to get budget for this." I'm like, "Your budget was approved a year ago.
Exactly.
What are
Yeah.
you talking about?" But yeah, it's super frustrating to me how like um, sometimes when I talk to a security executive, they're like, "I'm the post breach CISO here." It's like, man, yeah, it's not like the person before them was doing anything really that different. It's just
Nah.
they were just at the wrong place at the wrong time and happened to fall victim to
Yeah, they didn't happen to see the bus coming off the left side of the fairway, or freeway rather.
it. Yeah, um, it's amazing how budgets just suddenly appear post breach. Um, I think one of the major
Hindsight
casinos that
always
was breached.
2020. And that's where the dollars are at. Like, oh, yeah, well, you should have done this thing. Well, I would have if you gave me the money. Oh, well, here's the money now. Well, that doesn't help because that thing already happened, but thanks for the cash.
Yeah, yeah. And then and then to actually spend and operationalize that budget takes two
Takes,
years, and then the uh, the average CISO tenure again is less than 2 years. So that means,
you're fired twice by then. Yeah.
yeah. So the next person that comes in and they're just gonna say, "Oh, that stuff was all wrong. I need X amount for this now."
Yep.
and and it's like that. What is that roller coaster meme? The roller coaster tycoon, where the guy just wants to get off.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
You're just doing a loop.
yeah. um,
This is great. Yeah.
yeah. The it's amazing to me just how many cyber programs are like good enough cyber programs. Like uh, it seems like very few companies want to be great at cyber. Everybody just wants to be good enough at cyber, and there's so many reasons for this, um, and we gotta fix this quickly.
Yeah. I love it. Slap the top. There's so much
Yeah.
stuff in this bad boy. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, we got to run through a couple of these because we're running up on time. Um, the fact that most companies are reactive proactive, I think we touched on this earlier, is like on the post breach thing. Um, I think this ultimately has to stop, and I think I think, as you know, the organizations where I've seen security teams be most proactive are ones where like the people in the organization actually have tenure and have the political capital internally at their companies to change things up.
Yeah. I mean, and, you've got plenty of proof that getting ahead of it is a good thing. So start getting ahead of it.
Yeah. Um, and temporary solutions lead to redundant problems. I mean, there's so many band-aid approaches in cybersecurity right now everywhere, and ultimately, um, we see this all the time where like companies will just stack on solutions, layer upon layer of solutions, and then like
Expensive.
they look at it 5 years later and they're like, wow, we got to rip all this stuff out and start from scratch.
Yeah, and I like that last one that you have there, right? Organizations fight battles, not wars. I mean, this cyberspace was declared a combat space by Cyber Command in 2010. It's 2025, so that's a long time ago. You're engaged in combat whether you like it or not, and you've got to be in there for the long haul. It's not going to be over tomorrow. The battle, you won the battle tonight. It ain't over.
Yeah, and look, I think lots of security teams like have a really tough time like tracking metrics over time, metrics that really matter, and
Exactly, metrics that matter. Yeah.
it's so hard to like show progress when you're unable to do that. But Chase, you have a new book coming out tomorrow. I know we have to wrap up at 1:30 Eastern, so tell us a little bit about it.
Oh yeah, so it's the second one in the series, Gabriel. If you're into like thriller and I don't know, cyber noir kind of stuff, it's AI and cyber and Navy SEALs and national security and the president, whatever. But the cool thing is, none of what I wrote about here is like bullshit. Like everything is actually technically possible and everything is very realistic. So, if you're into that, I hope you enjoy it. But it's out for pre-order, and I do donate the proceeds from that to veterans charity. So pre-orders go towards vets.
That's awesome, man. Love it. Well, thank you everybody for dialing in and listening to us rant and complain for the last 30 minutes. We will be doing more of these down the road, so keep an eye out for it. And we'll see you all next month at the next Hyper LinkedIn Live. Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
y'all.